All right, now for the hit panel of the day, Programmatic. But before we get to that, I just want to announce, as I hinted to earlier in the day, that with our work with Prohaska, Matt, and his consulting company, we've now created the Programmatic Digital Out-of-Home standards, and they are in 3 areas. So it's tech specs, and it's creative specs, and then it's measurement specs. Why standards? Standards are critical to building programmatic and getting it all to scale, and this is really great for buyers and for sellers. So it's been a great accomplishment, a lot of work. This has been done in conjunction, coordination with the IAB and Steve Freitas of the OAAA. And I'm going to be short with this because Matt's going to take over, and then we're going to moderate the panel. And then after the panel, we've got an exciting quick view of Quivity's data from the screens. And then we're all going to have cocktails everywhere. So I hand it over to Matt Prohaska. Buddy. You want everybody else up, Matt, or are you doing? Oh, you might going to talk.
I just want to do 1 minute real quick. I know insert joke here about stereotypical last panel before cocktails and Will Hustle and all that. You guys remember Tug of War? Did you play that when you were a kid? Do you remember Battle of the Network Stars, where Tug of War was the last? Remember the anchor was always the last person and the strongest and the one digging in the sand? We take pride in the fact that we have anchored the last panel, the last 2 Video Everywhere. So usually they do that when people actually will stick around, not just for cocktails. So thank you, Barry and team. It's a privilege to be able to speak with you again. It's first on the standards. I want to thank Amit Shah, Ellen Oppenheim, and our whole team, along with Noah, Ajay, and the whole DPAA group. What you don't see are about 30 logos that we had shown of the different companies, several here in this room, many in the back, many around the world that have participated in contributing. Standards are always very, very difficult. There's a combination of cat herding and cattle prodding and a little bit of, we need to be in this together, and we know now everyone's going to have the perfect outcome, but there should be enough from everyone to be able to create liquidity in this new programmatic ecosystem. And just seeing that demo from IUTA and hearing the great announcements and progress from Broadsign and what we're going to hear from our panelists on both the buy and sell side, it's incredible to look back just 1 year and how we were talking much more about theory and concept and seeing it in practice. Those screens and those results from Keurig could have come on any campaign, on any screen, in any digital ecosystem. And the fact that it's now happening in the DPB space is personally pretty neat to see and witness. And it's all the result of a lot of folks jumping in much more than dipping a toe and actually leveraging the value of data with automation, but letting humans do their thing. So we're going to bring on 5 pretty good humans who've been doing their thing and talk about how they've been leveraging data and automation. If the panel could join me right now. Please join me in welcoming Heather from ConAgra, Jason from Digitas, Dan from Clear Channel, Alan from Deloitte, and Amy from Cadreon. All right, so as we always say, 5 people, so we're gonna go back and forth as much as we can here, and we always start with the folks closest to the money. So Heather, let's start with you. On the brand side, this past year, and especially the last 6 months, have seen a little more visibility into how brands either build out their own programmatic stacks and leveraging their talent in-house, or leveraging agencies and tech and supply partners in a different way. How has the arc been at ConAgra from what you've been leading out? Give them a sense of how hands-on you guys have been compared to maybe some other brands.
Yeah, so I'd say that we have a mentality of that it takes a village to get everything in market. We actually built out our tech stack internally and did wide vetting of our DMP partners, DSP partners, et cetera, and built those contracts directly, but partnered really closely with our agency friends, as well as then once we had those contracts in place, our partners actually are partners. They sit in our business meetings, they're part of every conversation, and we're using that in a very different way, I think, than some other companies are. We built out a team internally that actually has tech ingrained into it. Some of that is people learning, so it's people who don't necessarily have that tech background in learning, and other people who are actually hired with a little bit more of the programmatic mindset. I
was going to say, so it's that typical formula concoction around people from marketing, people from other departments, and then some outside influence and folks who've been there before. Nice, nice, nice. And so where has this been something that's been able to impact cross-channel? Or one of the challenges is always, how do you surround your data? One of the themes you'll hear throughout is how people line up their tech, their targets, and their teams around this. So great to hear about the team integration and the new influx. How has targeting been for a global CPG brand when it's not like you can have someone fill out a lead and then someone's going to call them for life insurance that moment and you can track the DR funnel all the way down?
Yeah, so it has been a huge undergoing of getting a lot of different disparate data pieces together in one place. So our DMP partner, which is Crux, actually houses a lot of third-party data, so things like IRI and 8451, et cetera, which are the actual in-store data components for our business, as well as second-party data relationships. So there's a lot of publishers that we've built this year, and we're actually midstream of ingesting a ton of their data to actually understand consumer behavior based on recipe usage, et cetera, and then as well as our first-party data, so things like people who visit our website or sign up for a CRM, and then using that with partners to actually see, okay, when we use that data to target, what do we see that lift in offline store sales actually happen?
And actually getting that closed loop, and
exactly.
You can draw at least a dotted line and go cause effect.
Yep, exactly.
Nice.
Yeah.
A lot of folks didn't think that was possible. Jason, first question for you.
Yes,
Cubs in 5, 6, or 7?
I'm still hoping for 4 if we can recount game 1. Just game 1 out. Cubs win in 5.
Pretty good starting pitcher, yeah. So as someone who's in charge of kind of the electricity or the current that runs across your organization and all of your brands, what's the hardest part about having data used cross-screen, and when certainly the different media channels are at different phases, let's say, you compare desktop to radio or where digital place-based is today?
So fundamentally, we try to use data in all the different kinds of media, both programmatic and linear association. Right, so the notion of where data plays into the mix is, well, it depends on how you're executing and where you're executing. Fundamentally, linear TV buying just regular TV, is as data informed as programmatic media buying is. It's just the level at which you're executing is. And so for us, the electricity metaphor, which I kind of like and may leverage.
You can source me. That's
done. It's actually a good one, because what we've had to do is actually make sure that that is something that's conducive throughout the entire organization. So one of the things that I speak about quite often is, back in the day, you used to think about the partnerships in an ad agency were the art director and the copywriter. But now it's more the data scientist and the planner. Right? That's the new partnership. And so when it comes to a programmatic execution, they're thinking about where we're putting the multitude of versions that have to be created and the elements that have to be customized, as well as how do we customize that by the medium. As you said, not every medium has the same level of sophistication for output. So that partnership between the data scientist and the planner has to then permeate the entire organization, right? So we have a great creative director in our New York office named T. Shaw. He wants to be equipped with the planning tools, with the data tools, right? Because he needs to build out the versions. He needs to understand where he's going. And so he partners directly with our media partner, our programmatic media lead, who is in charge of understanding the different kinds of media where we're executing.
And that's not too many people. That is getting seamless, because there's a stereotype of, programmatic is supposed to be more automation, but it's 14 people to change a light bulb. But it seems like it's parts of different folks coming together differently and actually having better ROI and efficiency for the agency and for the client.
Yeah, Heather said it takes a village. Well, so like everyone's a villager, right? So it's not creating villages or groups. It's that the theory and the strategy permeates everything we do. So it's not like we call in the creative director and the planner and the media lead. Like, it is what they do. And so the way that they interact is from a foundation of data now.
Nice. So Jason brought up an interesting job title that often isn't used in programmatic buying, at least kind of version 1.0 in the quote-unquote digital world 7 years ago, and that's planning. So Amy, as someone who's been in broadcast TV at great brands like Lifetime and top agencies like MEC, and now in charge of Cadreon's advanced TV, help us with the stereotype that a lot of television executives on the sell side, a lot of, frankly, digital place-based publishers originally have, thinking that programmatic equals no publisher involved, cookie phishing all over the place, and there's no concept of real traditional media planning. Are you finding there's a different skill set that kind of being brought in that's sort of programmatic 2.0, the new type of buyer when it comes to leveraging it in traditional media as well?
I think it's a really big combination. You need to understand the marketplace. It comes down to negotiations. People are making money. They've put a value on their inventory. Programmatic is a different type of attitude, so you need to understand the purpose of it in the entire media plan. It's not to take over a media plan. It's supposed to complement. It's supposed to enhance. And it's supposed to add to what is already being done by a client. So you need to understand the role it needs to take, which then allows for the right planning, everything from the dollars to the right inventory to the right path. Is it targeted buying, such as what we saw before with Zycam, which still has the scale, which people can get the frequency and the awareness? Is it addressable, where you're trying to do the closest one-to-one that we have in TV? Is it connected TV, which blends TV and digital? Is it programmatic? So you have to understand all of that to then also understand what is the measurement. What are you actually going to go after, improve on the back end of the campaign? So you need to be able to handle all of that to put together the proper plan for a client.
So in our theme of tech targets and teams, the hypothesis and what we've seen play out in about 5 other media already is that the tech and the targets are usually the easiest to get set up, and then the last piece are us, the actual teams. And as a former proud TV buyer at BBDO way back in the day when I was much skinnier and still talking as high-pitched and fast, but we were talking the traditional upfronts and scatter. How challenging has it been, have you noticed, with the other divisions in terms of who's going to actually be inserting budgets? Because the benefit and opportunity we talk about around OutofHome and DPB is that, holy cow, this is great. There are 5 different potential teams that could buy programmatic DPB today. Depending on the agency, though, it's either a tug of war or like playing ping pong where they're doubles where you stare at the ball and no one hits it. So how have you tried to find that mesh of talent within Cadreon specifically and then all of IPG? So
Cadreon is one of the specialized business units within IPG, so we're really there to be a resource. We're there to help a team. Sometimes we play a much larger role in the execution. Sometimes we play a larger role in the planning. Sometimes it's really educational. So wherever the team needs or whatever the client is in the process, that is the role that we will play. We don't really necessarily feel there's a tug of war. We're not going after the same budget because the budget has to do what's right for the client.
Nice, nice. So we've covered tech, targets, teams. The one thing, it would help if it started with a T, but the most important piece that often gets left to last, and we didn't want to, we'll save our great seller here, Dan, for last. But Alan, a lot of your practice and your history has been helping get the right message in front. And we saw a lot of inspiring creative and a lot of great messages around how to leverage data into the creative process. What have you seen either within Deloitte or with your various clients around how challenging that's been? And is it still the stereotypical silo where media and creative were split off and they, neither the two shall speak? You just hand me the 30-second spot or hand me the 300 by 250 and let me go away? Or is it actually more synergistic these days?
It's a good question. I think we still have to remember, all of us, that we're all in the idea business first. We're not in the plumbing business, we're in the poetry business first. So if that is the premise, the message, if we let the medium get ahead of the message, then what we're going to end up with is a lot of lower funnel programmatic creative that's written by algorithms that isn't going to make anybody feel anything. And if we don't make people feel, they're not going to buy. They may buy if they're at the very bottom of the funnel and they're in that 2 to 3% range where they want a bundle and a product and a price and they're ready to go. But most of what we see on the programmatic side is we got to put the poetry back out front. We got to find scalable models for the creative so it's not all bespoke creative. How do you do that? Well, part of that is the team part that you mentioned. We got to get enough headlines, enough writers involved from the paid side, and then what can we turn over for the consumer side of the story that they can create, right? Because they're telling half the story. So if they're smart. The other thing is, are you creating messaging against a journey, or are you just creating messaging as a shotgun, right? In an impression-based media buy? I think that's the first question that we ask ourselves is, hopefully we're designing the message for the customer's journey, and where that is, as we just saw in the last case that was up here. A very specific journey, very specific data pointing to very specific copy against a very specific client message. When we get to that level of smarts, then it's much smarter than just sort of using programmatic to shotgun message.
Makes sense. So it sounds like we're actually getting there. I turn to Dan, to someone again who's been working very hard, under a year at Clear Channel, right?
About a year.
Just about a year. So you guys are probably, in terms of the broad publishers and major players, when you combine the size and scope that you've got globally, along with the starting point, you guys have probably made some of the more the larger advances out there in terms of leveraging the promise of data and location out there. I've seen, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm checking out some cool banners here, but there are actual products that you've had and launched with, and aside from a couple of senators that I respect, Schumer and Franken, who I politely disagree with on some of their concerns, it seems like it's been pretty impactful. Can you give us a sense of the practicality of who's been using it and where it's worked and what's been hardest about getting it set up?
Sure. So we launched Clear Channel Outdoor Radar about 8 months ago. It's basically using mobile data to understand exactly what Alan was getting at, the movement of people in the real world, the behaviors that they show, the paths that they move through their daily journey, and the points at which you can impact them with messaging on billboards. To steal a line from my head of research, what's the last great mobile banner ad you remember? It's not really a creative medium. It's not a storytelling medium. We have the ability to use the kind of data that you guys use on a daily basis, but to apply it to a 48-foot canvas, that's when you can really start to tell stories and build brands. And so it's kind of an exciting innovation. We've brought out audience planning, attribution solutions, mobile retargeting solutions. The biggest challenge is that we are an industry, both on the buy side and the sell side, that has historically bought based solely on location. And so what we're trying to do is educate our teams, educate our partners, that it's not about location or audience, it's about audiences and locations and the power of the insights to be able to target. So exactly going to what Alan said, it's understanding what people are doing. We talk about how in the mobile era, location is not about lat long. It's about understanding not just where someone is, but why they're there, what's around them, where they were before, where they're going afterwards. And when you're thinking about targeting people on that journey, you have to think about the opportunities that Out-of-Home can deliver. All that said, we've got sellers in our organization who've done a phenomenal job selling real estate effectively for 25 years. And I tell my team all the time, I can't criticize people for not knowing how to do a job that we haven't taught them how to do. So much of my focus and so much of my time and our team's time is on that internal education and the training.
Yeah, and as marketers realize that you don't, reverse engineering your media out of reverse engineering your messaging out of a media allocation, which is, unfortunately, when it goes from the upfront to a multi-brand portfolio, then gets allocated by brand. Yeah. Then you work backwards from a media allocation. The message is the last thing upstream. We have to flip that model completely on its end, right? If we flip that, then we can use tools like Dan is talking about and go from the message to the medium and do it in a much smarter way.
Yeah, I know it's early days, but has there been a single, have your sales teams gotten a single piece of creative that was unique to the type of buy taking advantage of Radar? Or is it still, all right, we're understanding what the targeting capabilities are, and then we'll get to that last piece later and take that message for that next leap of ROI?
So the three parts of Radar, the audience planning, attribution, and mobile retargeting. The attribution is the thing that's resonating the fastest and scaling the fastest, simply because like everyone knows, all I got to do is walk a couple blocks from here into Times Square. You get in your gut that Out-of-Home works. But now we're in a point where, because of so many of the colleagues I'm sitting here on stage with, we have to prove it. And so now we have the ability to prove it with data, primarily using mobile data, to understand what happens after someone's exposed. What do they do next? Where do they go? And can we prove visitation lift and things like that? So that's the thing that's scaling the fastest. The audience planning side is getting the greatest interest. So that's opening up the doors for us to speak with clients, to speak with planning teams, to speak with digital teams. It's interesting what you were saying before about how Cadreon is operating. And we work very closely with the team at Rapport. They're great partners of ours. But now being able to add to their skill set and their insights to be able to have different conversations with the Cadreon team, with the UM team, all of a sudden Out-of-Home goes from a tactic to a more strategically planned medium, because you can ask the questions we've never been able to ask before. Like, not just why that billboard? That's great, you want to buy that location, we'd love to sell it to you. But why? Who are you trying to reach, and how are you trying to target that person? And really critically, how does it fit into the broader mix? The tactics that you're using, the way that you're targeting, the way that you're using data, we can now have that conversation, but again, with the power of this unbelievably creative canvas that has impact. It's early days. So I guarantee if we sit down tomorrow and talk about this, you're going to want to talk about things that are on our roadmap, probably 18 months down our roadmap. Right now, we're trying to get an industry to embrace the idea of audiences and planning audiences and targeting audiences in a way that they haven't before.
Yeah, step change. We always joke, your sales organization always wants to be one step ahead or one step behind the market. Right. When you're too far ahead. I've been in mobile behavioral targeting companies that were 11 years too early. Like, it was great when you're doing the pitches and then you realize that no one cares yet or no one understands the real value. So you got to kind of baby step it. I wanted to pick up on another point and ask our two folks here to my immediate left about attribution that you mentioned. We've talked about that being the next great arms race. We talk about all the time where, when I was had the privilege of being at the New York Times, we'd say, we do this iPad homepage sexy takeover, and we do this fantastic full-page print, and then the brand will do something great on television. They'll do a fantastic billboard. They'll put up great messages in Captivate's elevators, and then because someone sneaks in with an 88 by 31 button on the website that wasn't even viewed, that got tagged, last click or last view attribution, they get credit, and everyone else. That seems unfair. Heather, I would ask, and a lot of times the agencies say, well, that's what the brands tell us how to keep score. I would think someone that's been through building out your own stack, you've kind of at least maybe not programmatized it to all your media, but there's probably a more advanced methodology.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's early days for CPG because we don't own our sales data, so we rely heavily on partnering and getting the right systems in place in order to measure. But one of the things that we're actually mid-pilot on right now with a partner, which I don't want to be an ad for them, so I won't mention who they are unless someone wants to know afterwards, but is actually what are all of the exposures along the journey to a purchase? Where are those journeys occurring in a purchase? Where are those journeys not occurring in a purchase? And what are those differences so that we can start to actually accurately attribute sales to those multiple touch points so that we aren't attributing everything to a search ad, right? So knowing that search is really cheap impressions, which in a marketing mix model, which CPGs have typically used to measure all of our sales results on, it gets really high ROIs, but we know that there are a lot of things that a consumer experiences before that moment where they go to search. And so how do we get that opportunity to really split that sale up between the right touch points and see what really matters most? So it's a journey for us, but we're kind of piloting this and really trying to push ahead in it. And I know other industries have certainly been doing this a lot more than we have in the DR space, et cetera, but we're hoping to get there.
Huge. It sounds like DPB deservedly then. We always talk about how people learn attribution models not to game the system, but at least to give everyone a fair shot to play the game the same way, right? Jason, how much is attribution a part of the journey within Digitas's brands and leveraging different methodologies? Because a lot of times you guys have to, your media team has to kind of take whatever rules you're set up, right? Are you able to influence a little bit and kind of say, no, there's a better way, guys?
Yeah, so we're kind of in a strong position. So our go-to-market strategy is a data-driven approach, right? So that is our unique differentiation in the market. Our data analytics team is nearly 500 people globally, right? So that's larger than a lot of agencies, right? And so the reason why clients that work with us is because they want that level of sophistication. They want to be pushed. What Heather's talking about, what they're doing, we don't work with ConAgra, but we've had conversations before, and the steps that they're taking are exactly the same kind of steps that a lot of our clients have been down that roadmap, that path. And this is the kind of thing where so sometimes we pull the client along with us, sometimes they pull us along with them. But at the end of the day, we're looking for that fundamental knowledge of what's working. To that end, CPG, while a laggard category, has actually made a lot of great strides. Because the notion is very simple. Find all the points of exposure, marry those to everything that we can control, tie those to transactional data, understand what works. Media mix modeling as a science is down 40% in 2 years. Right? They're losing the game because it's not real work. The statistic, I won't bore you with R squares, although I can.
Over cocktails, that's perfect cocktail fun.
But like the science doesn't work. MTA, multi-touch attribution, across the different channels, now that we have different ways to integrate the data, it actually is a more fundamental understanding of what's working.
Yeah, and I think the other element of that too is not only is there a lot of flaws in the actual methodology of an MMA, but the lagging of the time of when we are planning the next year by the time we get the results for this year. That's not sufficient. In a real-time activation world, we need to know as quickly as possible what's working and what's not so that we can dial something up and something down. We can edit the creative if we need to, because this element is just not as powerful as it could be. Yeah. That's what we're looking to do in the industry.
Yeah, MTA is forward-looking where MMM is backwards-looking.
Yep.
MMM is macro, where you can get very granular, both from a media and a creative and a strategy perspective for the MTA. It is what's going to guide investments.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So you would think, gee, TV, big legacy dollars, everyone builds their roadmaps to go after television and all that. Amy, I'm curious, which categories, without naming brands and dollars, unless you feel free, you know, it's late, and we're all a little looser now. But no, what categories or verticals within Cadreon or IPG have been a little more forward-thinking or willing to test in not just the traditional linear TV space, but in just thinking about video cross-channel where you're working with other divisions within Cadreon?
I mean, typical, like every new media, it's the categories you think it would be. It's a lot of the categories that have a ton of money, they're willing to test. If the test doesn't work or shows a test always works, but if it's a negative result or a bad result, it's still not bad because it's learnings and they're okay with it, they apply it and they move on. So it's following the same path. And you have some of the smaller clients that are dabbling, they want to be informed, they want to know what to do, but they don't have the dollars to move forward in this direction. So we're trying to share as much as we can, show case studies. I mean, addressable in itself is an amazing opportunity for brands, but you need the right scale. And with the scale comes dollars. So it's a catch-22 for some of the clients to come into that space. And talking about measurement, here's the greatest thing that TV's had, the closest thing to one-to-one. Well, it takes 6 to 8 months to get any sort of measurement on the back end. And it's still kind of within the safe houses because everything has to be PII compliant, but you're talking your 6 to 8 months where someone's already spent $2 million, and now we're trying to figure out the closed loop, sales matchbacks, brand health study, and when you even get those results back, they're so fundamentally out here that, you know, my team right now, no one is allowed to send out any results until we sit down and actually can pull out some tactical learnings that we can apply because they're too broad. They don't mean anything. So we're really trying to find what does this mean? What learning does it have to apply to the next campaign? Or, to be quite honest, the whole media plan as a whole. I mean, maybe some of these pathways are learnings to influence the whole media plan and not just that one channel.
What were some of the lessons learned? You know, one of the advantages when we first kicked off the standards project is that, hey, we have the luxury of being not first mover here, and we can have second or even third mover advantage and learn from some of the things. What have some of the initial challenges been around advanced television that we in the DPB space and folks that are thinking about being able to have addressability and have a more robust programmatic ecosystem now learn from? Boy, that was a pain in the butt, and I wish the SSPs and the DSPs and the sellers came at us differently because it would have been a lot easier a year ago when I was first doing this if X, Y, or Z were in place. Anything?
From a tactical standpoint, it's still buying and selling. And I think from a sales perspective, buyers still are dealing with a million different sellers in the marketplace. So if you can make their job easier, it's just going to be a lot smoother. Right now, you know, with Cadreon, we're working with many different partners, and I'm still trying to explain to them how to fill out a proper chart, what I'm going to need with a proper submission for a plan. You know, every nuance, the target demo, the Nielsen age sex demo, everything that's going to help me evaluate that so I can put that to a plan and choose what's right for the client. So it's still coming back to servicing. That really is the biggest challenge we have. We have also a lot of people in the space that just don't understand media. And so we're trying to balance the data information, the tech information, as well as at the end of the day, we're still dealing with, in TV, we're still dealing with Nielsen. That's still the jumping off point for everything. So we need to try to find that parallel path right now.
I can build on that a little bit. The two of the things that I think are most frustrating for us in the addressable and programmatic TV space that I think if digital play space can come out on top in this area is, one, the data democratization. So I want to be able to port whatever data I think is the best data to every partner so that I can gain scale across the same audience. And that has been a huge challenge with the television partners. They all kind of built these partnerships. They must have signed contracts where they had exclusivity, and therefore you have to redefine.
They did.
So that piece is extremely challenging. The other piece is the time it takes to get up and running. Like, to call yourself programmatic or addressable and say that you're more advanced and then take just as long as it does to get a normal TV schedule up or longer is incredibly frustrating as a client as well. So having 12-week lead times for certain partners is just way too long.
And that's why at Cadreon, from we call it advanced TV, I refuse to call it programmatic TV group because of that very reason. Because for a client coming to the table, they immediately think that programmatic TV is going to run exactly like digital, and it doesn't. And in fact, with all the data and all the technology coming to TV, we've actually taken steps backwards in the time, which is interesting.
Quick story, Steve Grubbs, who we've been very fortunate to have do a couple of neat assignments with our team, led our TV buying group at BBDO. And in 1993, Time Warner, this is when they were slightly less than $86.4 billion of value, Time Warner did a full service network trial in Orlando, Florida. I don't know, some old timers might remember that. And it was interactive video, and you could actually order a movie from your remote, and it was amazing. And what we were told afterwards, after the demo happened, and we did a trial with Pizza Hut where a pizza was delivered right in the conference room and all that, it turned out in Orlando there were just racks and racks of VCRs set up. And when someone actually hit their remote, a call went to Steve or Sam in Orlando, and he went, oh, wait, Top Gun, hang on, and like slid it in. So understandably, it seems like there's a little bit of that maybe in some of the early TV SSPs, and it's a little more duct tape. But Dan, same question for you. Where's the tech been good for you? And wow, all right, we can actually run a little bit faster. And where is it just painful right now because you see where you want to go, and it's getting the buyers there certainly, and your sales team education, it'll come. But where's the technology needing to help?
That's probably the biggest frustration is we can see where we're going. And I just want to, I feel like a little politician here, like you asked a question, I'm going to pivot to something that was said before. But
fair, that's fine, no.
I want to get rid of the word programmatic because it's such a meaningless word these days. And it means different things for different mediums at different stages of development. Yeah. And so for the out-of-home world, for the place-based world, programmatic oftentimes means workflow automation and smoothing the process. What we're getting to, I'd like to see us get there faster, is data-driven decisioning and actually getting to automation, not just in the workflow, but for you guys to be able to see our audiences in the same context that you see every other audience. The tech isn't there yet. The out-of-home industry, there are too many publishing platforms. Andreas from Ayuda was up here, our friends abroad, saying they'd love to see us all on the same platform, and it's just not going to happen, right? So there are different platforms, and the bridge needs to be built between the content management systems, the back-end systems, and it's all going to be driven by, frankly, the standards that we're working on and API connectivity between systems. It's about passing data. We're not there yet.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just to push you on that a little bit.
Good.
That's a politician.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the word programmatic is wrong. I just think that some people selectively use it for a couple of reasons. One, it adds value to a company. We could say they could sell something programmatically.
Press release.
So it's the valuation part. And two, because it's an easier answer than trying to explain what you're really doing. But you don't need a unified platform across every medium. All you need is every platform to be able to consume data, decision in real time, and manifest different versions in the display.
We're saying the same thing.
That's it.
We're saying the same thing. What I'm saying is the state that out-of-home is in right now is it's been closed systems that have not talked to each other and have not been built to be able to pass data.
Got it.
And so the connections are what's being built right now. And what I'm pleased about is, unlike so many things I've seen in out-of-home over the last 10, 20 years, we are actually recognizing that it's maybe in our interest to set up some standards on that and not just have everyone cowboy it and do it on their own. So the standards that we're setting up, DPAA, the fact that we're working with the OAAA and the IAB and trying to do it all in the same way is critical. It's still going to go through this period of kind of storming, which is where we are now.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's ultimately where the innovation will come from. Some of the approaches, I hope what we're doing with Radar and I hope what we're building from a programmatic standpoint will be embraced and will grow and will serve as a foundation not just for Clear Channel, but for more of our industry. I can't predict that, but we won't know that until we actually go through the process. And what we're doing today is really different than what we were doing 8 months ago when we started this. It's just we've learned so much. The key, I think, is to apply that and to be able to pivot as you go along. And more than anything, and if Wade is here, used to work with Wade, he'll appreciate me saying this, it all ultimately starts not with what matters to us, it's what matters to you guys, right? We have to start with the customer.
I would say the customer. At Deloitte, what we say is, there's Centurion companies who are trying to struggle with having been built from the inside out, which is a lot of the networks you're referring to. And there are those more recent ones who start from the outside in, from the customer in. And they're the ones who are relying on software as opposed to CapEx on a whole lot of technology and hardware, which is where a lot of this industry, has its roots. So a lot of the CapEx actually went to hardware as opposed to software. Yeah. Now it's flipped itself. And what we're seeing is a lot of the, outside in as opposed to inside out. And I think we're in this in-between point, right?
And there's also, from a CapEx standpoint, there's different realities to an outdoor business. When you're putting a 48-foot LED display into the ground on the side of a highway, there's a little bit more permanence to what you're doing than if you're updating your software, right? So we have to think about those systems and plan for them in a way that allows us to not have to change out the displays every year, but instead change out the background information, change out the software, the systems that are running it, and to your point, the connectivity and the ability to pass the data back and forth.
Our standard joke is that an addressable ad server is not exactly some dude at a billboard going like this.
Right.
It's hard to have dynamic creative.
Our middleware is almost just as bad.
True. It's almost as clunky.
But as billboard guy up here, I have to say,
please,
to your point about the meaning of programmatic, our business can be fully programmatic and automated up until the point where the vinyl is spit out from the offset printer.
Oh,
right?
sure.
Like the last step of attaching that to the structure, that's not going to be programmatic or automated for a long time. But everything that goes to that, frankly, that's no one's problem. That's our problem. And so what we're doing is taking the average posting period from 7 days down to 2 days so that we can be faster to market. It's still not perfect, but it's a heck of a lot better, especially as we build out the platforms and the systems so that the purchasing and the identification of the audiences and targeting them and the creative decisions can all be done in close to real time. Right. And then we got to get the vinyl up there.
Yep. Well, it's not only a journey for the customers experiencing advertising and content in a different way, it's a journey for this entire industry. So hopefully you got a sense of where 5 pretty smart individuals at 5 great companies have been on that. Please join me in thanking Heather, Jason, Dan, Alan, and Amy.